Carnistic colonialism and the impact on divine feminine. I'm just going to leave this on for a few seconds so you guys can take this in. It's very provocative. First, when I saw this, it's called Mother's Milk. Dr. Sinnaeve.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it's definitely like one of those shock value images for sure. I guess one of the things that comes to mind for me when I see that is it really speaks to people's cognitive dissonance around, around how we treat animals, right? And if we can put ourselves in their shoes and how people just don't necessarily even think twice about what is on their plate, right? It's not beef, it's a cow. This is my daughter who's major animal activist. She's very much like, don't call it pork, let's call it pig. That's what you're eating, is a pig, So that's kind of, I guess, what I thought when I first saw it.
Right. Dr. Dehghan, what about you? Your reflections?
I actually, when I saw that, because especially if it is a white man actually having that meat, isn't it? And I thought about the idea that white is better. In a lot of Asian and African countries, it's like kind of whatever comes from the West, even the food is better, burger, if it has, meat and everything. So they embrace it just because, they have this idea that whatever comes from the West is better. And it is sad, again, because all these processed foods, for example, animal products comes actually, from the West. And, when we talk about actually decolonizing nutrition, it's about going back to eating plants, what we used to eat, and rejecting all these processed foods. Yeah. Which is like kind of, you go to China, India, and I haven't been to Iran, so I can't really comment on that. But you have McDonald's, Pizza Hut, and which are actually, it's interesting, expensive places. So only people who are well off actually can afford to go to those places to eat. But if you think about it, it's junk food. Something which is just junk food is seen as a symbol of status. Yeah, so that is what comes to mind when I look at that picture.
Right, Brenda, what do you think? When you look at this picture, this amazing picture.
I mean, it is amazing, and it is sort of just kind of in your face. Has a huge impact. But I will say that the first thing that I thought was that, it kind of pushes this idea that he has permission.
Right.
And I don't, and I don't feel like he does, I mean, and cows are, very nurturing and, very sort of motherly and that kind of thing. But I don't think that is what a cow would be doing. If given the choice, I don't think that she would be holding a human and nursing him. And so, in a way, I almost wish that it was that she was resisting more, because they do, and all animals do resist exploitation. And I think that, we lose sight of that in the normalization of exploiting animals, and the fact that so much of their resistance is hidden from us constantly. Yeah. Here in Baltimore, every single year, a cow escapes from one of our slaughterhouses, and then we get to watch this cow run through the streets of Baltimore on the news, and they have the choppers every year one cow escapes and runs for his life. And I just feel like we don't see enough of that. And so although this photo is, very impactful, or this painting, I'm sorry, is very impactful. I just think that it would be certainly inaccurate.
Yeah, absolutely. You spoke about permission, and that really is a very profound observation that you've made, Brenda, looking at this picture. Naijha, what is this, what comes up for you when you look at it?
There's a lot of things, but it's just making it look like it's not natural to get milk from your actual biological mother's breast. That's what it looks like to me, that you need to get this milk from an animal. And then the fact that it is a white man, it speaks to the mentality. It speaks to a certain sick mentality. And I'm going to just throw it out there: sex with the animals, or just pornographic. I don't like it. As soon as you brought it up, I was disgusted.
Right. So there's a lot of provocation across the board. You've mentioned, Dr. Sinnaeve mentioned cognitive dissonance, that it, probably gets people to think about, hey, that's an animal. Is that natural? The whole idea challenges that normalization of exploitation of animals that we've created. Dr. Dehghan spoke about, well, it's better. So if a person in the body of privilege, color that codes privilege, can have it, and if I have access to it, then it's better. It's status. It's worthy of higher status. Brenda spoke about this profound observation she made around permission, that there's not even resistance shown by the animal, which is completely unnatural, but that this person somehow has permission to violate the animal in the manner that they're doing. And you mentioned, Naijha, that it's pretty disgusting. It evokes the emotion of disgust. You're absolutely, it's all of that and more. And Jimmy May, he has some very powerful graphics and imagery on his Instagram, in addition to this. My next question, is to Dr. Sinnaeve. When did you connect the dots? I mean, images like these have now become popular, in my view. It's people, vegans, who are finding their voices, and they're starting to express themselves and through art and through creativity and through other places. But when you went plant-based, or when you went vegan, when did you first connect the dots? That in order for vegans with privilege to embrace veganism truly, that they must also learn to understand about unconscious bias.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I have to say, I wish it had been sooner. I feel like I've been whole food plant-based for 10 years now, and I certainly been promoting that in my practice and for a long time. And it wasn't, though, until I really became aware of, to use Robin DiAngelo's term, my white fragility, I guess, is when I realized, around the recent racial justice, movement, that I became aware of, started making me ask questions. Okay, so like, why has it taken so long for me to resolve my own cognitive dissonance, if you will, around racism? I feel, and then I'm like sitting here feeling guilty, and I'm like, my feeling guilty is serving no one, and it is certainly used oftentimes by white people as an excuse to disengage. So I just started engaging, right? I think I started connecting the dots when I realized that my own discomfort was necessary around this. I needed to, and really continue to need to, kind of grapple with the discomfort by not getting uncomfortable and challenging the status quo. I was continuing white centrality. Really, I was continuing the oppressing victims of systemic racism, or those without a voice, right? And so I think for me, and as white people experience the discomfort instead of running from it, I hope that they will choose to use it as a motivator. People of color feel this discomfort their whole lives on a daily basis, and of course, in with veganism, the animals, they don't have a voice, right? And that's why we have to be there for them. And one of the things I think that what some white people will say, for example, is I'm not racist, and I think it's important to kind of challenge this individualism, though, right? I treat everyone the same. This is what I've heard from some peers of mine, because I'm like, everyone has this unconscious bias. It's ingrained in us. It's just the way it is. But we can't do this if we only think that mean, bad people participate in racism, right? It's a structure, it's a system, and all of us have acted on it. And so it may not be intentional, but it has still caused a lot of harm. And so instead, we have to ask ourselves, I think, as white people, who I'm talking to now, right, is how has racism shaped me? And I'm going to make mistakes along the way, and you know, we all have to be okay with making mistakes around this, but we have to start to speak up because we created these problems, and so we really have to be a part of solving the problems.
Yes, it's really about starting to see what the issue is and also then starting to become active in being a part of the solution. My next question is for you, Brenda. Dr. Sinnaeve mentioned, unconscious bias and how she's learning and how she's really, really trying to identify it. Now, in the work that you do, what is the overall overarching goal of the work that you're doing, and how might it be moving the vegan consciousness and intersectional vegan consciousness towards helping one and all, not just vegans of color but also vegans in bodies of privilege, to start to recognize and deal with their unconscious bias?
Well, the basic sort of mission and thrust of my work is to make vegan living completely 100% accessible to everybody. And I would have thought that wasn't a controversial statement to make. But I've found within the vegan movement and within the animal rights movement, which I do consider to be two different movements that like crisscross at times, but they do feel different to me at times. I have found that is a controversial statement to make. But it's very much about, it's very theoretical in one sense, in that, it's just this idea that, that animals are having a particular experience on the planet that is due to human activity. But it also is very practical, because in your day-to-day life, there are so many different things that you can do, so many different actions that you can take that can negatively or positively impact animals and the planet. And so for me, I want to create a food system specifically, but like a world in which everybody has the same ability to create a harmonious environment for ourselves, for the animals, and for the ecosystems on the planet itself. But that starts with creating access. So if we want to talk about food specifically, then I think that every person should have the right, everybody has the right to be able to eat healthy plant-based food. Every person, right? So that's just ground zero. That's the basic. Is that we should have a food system that doesn't exclude entire groups of people based on their race and socioeconomic status from being able to access healthy plant foods. And so, that's the first goal that I have. And then it kind of expands out from there. And getting people who have the privilege to be able to access this lifestyle, this way of living, to understand not everybody has the same access that you do. I think that's a great first step. Like, just understand and stop saying to me, well, anybody can afford beans and rice. Beans and rice are cheap. Yes. I mean, we can all recognize that beans and rice are cheap. At the same time, some of the neighborhoods where I work, they don't even have beans and rice in the corner store. Right. So you want to talk about like people really not having, they have pickled pig feet and, pig snouts and pig ears and, chitlins, and like that's the kinds of foods that are being made available to folks. And even if they did have access to beans and rice, show me like a person who would choose to eat beans and rice every single day as opposed to eat from the dollar menu at McDonald's. Yeah. Both are equally cheap, but which one are they going to choose if given the choice, right? And so just getting people within the movement who may have their blinders on to understand that there are lots of different levels to accessibility, and we need to even the playing field.